Okay, Michael. So I think I have basically one more thing that I want to say before I start writing out little formulas and trying to convince you that this is something that we can do with some of the framework and infrastructure that we built so far. And I want to do it by diving in and sort of doubling down on this idea of drama management, on this idea of going through a story. So you're an AI person, and you need to kind of think about how you're going to build a system where a player can learn how to go through a story or can go through a story and have a good time. So the first question I'm going to claim you're going to have to ask yourself is, well, what's a story? What's a story really? And for the purposes of this discussion, I'm going to just assert something, and you can tell me if it makes sense to you, and that is that a story, it turns out, is just a trajectory. It's just one of many number of possible trajectories through a space that is made up of plot points. So does that make any sense to you? Do you know what I mean by that?
So you're being abstract about what stories are.
Yes, I'm being very abstract. That abstraction is important because we're computationalists.
And plot points, I guess plot points makes me picture a graph where there's points and there's edges, or there's vertices and there's edges. So plot point is like a vertex?
Yes, right. So a plot point is like a little circle, and that plot point might represent something like, I don't know, what's your favorite kind of story?
Mystery.
You like mysteries. Okay, cool. So I have a plot point that's something that has to do with the mystery. So what happens in a mystery? So there's a murder.
What?
Yes, that's a plot point. There's another plot point maybe, and that plot point is there's an accusation. There's another plot point, which is a weapon is found. And there's a whole bunch of these, and if they're set up right and they're sequenced just right, if of all the possible paths through all the possible plot points were set up just right, so you see the murder, you see the accusation, a weapon is found, and so on, then you have something that looks like a murder mystery. Now, I want to point out that it's possible to have good murder mysteries and bad murder mysteries. So if you think about the way a murder mystery works, right, it's got this really neat structure. There's a murder. Nobody knows who did it. That's what makes it a mystery. And then eventually you discover that every single person in the house had a reason to kill the person who was killed. And you find a weapon that points to a particular person. It's Michael. Everyone knows it's that person. And then that person gets killed. That's Michael again.
Oh, no.
And then you know, therefore, it wasn't Michael.
Or Curly.
And so then you keep going and you discover it was, in fact, not Curly. And then you find out who the real murderer is, and there's a whole bunch of things that happen very quickly, and it turns out it was the butler all along.
That would have been my guess.
And that makes it a good murder mystery. Now, here's a bad murder mystery. There's a murder, and you happen to see it, and so you know who the murderer is.
Okay.
And so then the murderer has to go off and start killing you and everyone else they can. You run away, and you know what you've got instead?
Chasing movie.
You've got a horror movie. So the difference between a murder mystery and a horror movie, there's not that much difference. It's really about whether you know who's doing the killing or not. So if I have all these elements lined up in some kind of, virtual game, depending upon what the player of the game is doing, I may have to interact with what's actually going on underneath so that the player experiences a murder mystery as opposed to experiencing a horror flick.
And when you say you might have to do that, you mean the drama manager.
Right, because the agent can describe what it means to be a murder mystery. And as a player, the author can't control the player. As the player is going through, the system may have to interact with that in order to make certain that you still get a good murder mystery as opposed to something else. And I'm going to claim that if we think of these points as being key things that happen in the story, and some sequences are better than others, then what we end up with is a story is a trajectory. It's a trajectory through these plot points, and that a good story is a particular kind of trajectory, and there are bad stories, which are other kinds of trajectories, and we need to figure out how to influence the player in such a way that we go down the good trajectories instead of the bad trajectories.
And can you say a word about what the player's doing here?
Well, so it would depend upon the situation, but imagine that, you've played games like Zork and various other things, right? You have vague memories of Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy and those like text adventure games. You're interacting with the system somehow, and you decide to go north, or you decide to open a door, or you decide to talk to somebody. It's just like a choose-your-own-adventure story. That's the kind of idea that I'm trying to evoke here.
Interesting. Okay. And so you're saying that we could think of this as a kind of MDP and then do reinforcement learning in it?
Yes, that's what I'm going to talk about. I want to convince you, if you buy this idea of story as trajectory with plot points, then it's actually pretty easy to turn it into an MDP.
Okay. I would like to hear about that.
Okay, let's do that.